Hey, Sammy here. I'm not your typical job counselor. I work remote and I travel the world as I kickstart careers. This is raw, real, and on the road.
Hi, I'm Sami, and welcome to the Career Kickstart Show. I am so excited to have Kendra Dahlstrom on my show today because she is going to give me the full rundown on leadership. Now, if you don't know Kendra, you will. She is an amazing leadership coach and trainer who worked in Silicon Valley for 20 plus years. So you know she knows what it takes to be a leader. She is somebody who is also a fantastic speaker, and I'm really excited to have her bring her knowledge about leadership, how people can step into leadership roles and just get that confidence. Because I know for a lot of people, a lot of women that I know, it's hard to feel that confidence in stepping into that leadership role. The word bossy, often is thrown at women. I know that. I've been called bossy before. In fact, when I was a kid, every once in a while, my mom would say either me or my sisters were mom bossy. So I'm so excited to have Kendra on the show. But Kendra, you're going to be able to introduce yourself way better than I can. So give us a little bit of your elevator pitch.
Thank you, Sami. So great to be here. So what I tell people when they ask what I do is I say that I empower people to become bold leaders. And what I mean when I say that is that it all starts with you. And it all starts with you individually having the courage to step out into your authentic self and embrace all of you. That means the good, the bad, and the ugly. And by doing that, you can become a truly bold leader. And we work with people to learn how to use their weaknesses and strengths. And I don't believe in weaknesses. I just believe in opportunities. And so we work on actually using what is perceived as a weakness to become a strength in your day-to-day life. So that is my elevator's pitch.
That's a good one. That one is fantastic. And I like because, you are a trainer, you're a coach, you're a speaker. So you actively work with people on these topics. And one thing that I find difficult when I think about leadership and everything like that is feeling that sense of imposter syndrome. Would you kind of go through and just kind of maybe give 3 handy dandy tips for people who are listening that they can kind of, utilize to step up into that leadership role and be like, I'm leading here?
Yes, definitely. And imposter syndrome is something I talk about. So that's excellent. 70% of people say they have imposter syndrome. And we know that those are the people who only admit to having it. So I like to joke that the other 30% are lying. Everybody has imposter syndrome. We all have self-doubt. It's a completely normal feeling that we get in our lives. The question is, how do you manage it? How do you deal with it? And so that's what I like to help people with. I believe everyone is a natural born leader. You have it. It's just some people have this extrovert personality and it comes a little more natural to them. But I will tell you, there's 11 pillars to bold leadership and not one person can master all of those. So not one person, you can have great leaders, extraordinary leaders. There's probably a few in life that have all 11, but most people don't. So that's something just to know going in is that you're all on a level playing field. Everyone has imposter syndrome. Know that everyone in the room has self-doubt, whether it's the CEO, the vice president, or you, and you're just out of college. So that is something that people feel very relieved when I tell them. They sort of have this weight lifted off their shoulders that, wow, okay, I'm on a level playing field. You mean they feel just like me? So just know that going in. The second part is know that you have control over everything that happens to you. So oftentimes the only reason why you're not where you want to be in your life is the harsh reality is because of you. And so you are the only barrier between your life today and where you want to be. And so we can talk a little bit about that in a little bit and unpack that a little bit too. And then I would say the third piece is around knowing that you are unique and special. And so this is a concept I work with people on, and it helps with overcoming that self-doubt. But each person, think of it like your DNA. Each person has a very unique set of skills and life experience they bring to the table. There was no one else like Sami Gardner. There was no one else like Kendra Dahlstrom. We are special. We are priceless. And once you recognize that and hone into that and own it, and really, really own it, and you're proud of it, even your weaknesses, you can say it with a smile on your face, and I'll share some of mine in a minute. But that is something that you will find very empowering, and with empowering comes leadership.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I mean, that's one of those things that I even talk to my clients about when I'm working with them on their resume or their career strategy, is the fact that they have a lot of control. I think that one thing that people focus on a lot is the external forces that might be barriers, how big they are is, up to them to decide, but we focus a lot on the external, but it's a lot more empowering to think about, okay, what can I change? What can I do? What are the steps that I can take right now? What would it take? So thank you for pointing that out, because that is one of those things that's been big for me in my life, is figuring that out. And also, I love the thing about kind of what I like to call honoring your strange, like whatever it is about you that just kind of like makes you you. It's your unique value proposition as a professional, as a employee, as just like a human in general. And it's so important for people to just go with that, because if you don't, I mean, that's the thing. There's like 7 billion people on this planet. You might as well just own who you are right now, because nobody is expecting somebody to be a clone. It's just not there.
No, and that's what's so interesting is so often in the workplace, we put that expectation on ourselves. So whether you work for a small business or a large business, and it's very, very common in large corporations where I've spent a large part of my career in Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies. So we often walk in thinking they expect us to be cookie cutter, as I would call it. So you're supposed to act, dress, behave a certain way, and then you're maybe dubbed a leader if you have these certain qualities. And it's not like that. Once you realize that you can step out of your self-doubt and really own who you are, and to have courage to share your real passions and perspectives and personality at the workplace, then you will see your career change. And this is because you now have the courage to just share who you are and share your uniqueness and bring that into the workplace. And so I see this happen all the time, where people are feeling like they have to fit into this certain thing, this certain role. And then what happens is they realize that, oh my gosh, I'm putting these limits on myself. It's only me that is the problem here. Once you realize, like you mentioned yourself, you can just be who you are, and then you go into work, it's so much more enjoyable. You're enjoyable to get around. But the key piece here, Sami, is that then people are emotionally connected to you. And the reason why is because you are being your authentic self, and you are sharing your real story, which is about who you are as a person. And people connect with story. We know that. We know that it's working for driving sales. We know that it's working for all these other elements of business like marketing. Why shouldn't it work for us as human beings in the human resource organization? So that's what I work with people on.
And that is also something that I love when it comes to leadership, because people don't want to follow a robot. Like, that's just it at the end of the day. Like, nobody gets, like, if you look at any, like, famous person or any leader, whether it's Barack Obama, it's Gary Vaynerchuk, it's, Oprah Winfrey, Ellen DeGeneres, any of those people, they all have something that is unique about them, and they go for it. Yep. Nobody has gotten, like, the grand prize for being, like, the most beige of beige. Like, that's just not how the world works.
Totally true. And the one piece that they all have in common, which I'm sure you're getting at here, is they all allow themselves to be vulnerable. And so that is huge. And even with you, think about your coaching business and when you work with people, once you allow yourself to be vulnerable and show that you are human, people love that. People relate. And again, that helps people get over the imposter syndrome. So I always like to tell people, sit back and think about the best leader that you've ever been around. I want it to be someone that you've actually been in a room with, because then you can feel that connection that you've had with them. and then think about the worst leader you've ever had in your life, and then compare the two. Oftentimes, the qualities between the two will be something around selflessness, allowing themselves to be vulnerable so that you don't feel that imposter syndrome. Good leaders know how to help other people not feel self-doubt or feel that imposter syndrome. And then the third element is all about collaboration and teamwork. They know, again, that it's not all about them, which, again, ties back to being selfless. Mm-hmm. So, and then the last one is rapport. So they're very, very good at building rapport. They understand it's all about relationship.
Oh, yeah. And that is one of the biggest things that for whether you are an entrepreneur or a job seeker, you need to know how to cultivate that, because no man is an island. But what I find interesting about your journey is that you're not just someone who had 20 years in Silicon Valley. You're not just, an international speaker, coach, and leadership trainer. You're also doing this as an entrepreneur and a mother. So there is that vulnerability right in there, because you're balancing, different hats. And sometimes one hat is covered in Cheerios and it's a little bit sticky and you're like, what happened here?
To say the least. Yes, absolutely. Actually, right now I'm hoping that the kids aren't going to run back here, is how it goes. So, yes. So actually I'm still full-time at my day job for a Fortune 100 company, and looking and working very, very hard to build my practice so I can transition out. But that is how my life is. I have, my full-time day job. I'm running this business as a mompreneur on the side. And then I'm obviously have my role as a mom and a wife. So all very, very important roles to me. I would say my role as mom and wife are probably the most important to me. And once I lose focus of that, everything else falls apart. So I'm a big advocate of what people call work-life balance, and I've always felt like it was opposite. It should actually be called life-work balance, because the only reason that we work is so that we can have the life that we want, versus the opposite. But when I work with my clients, or when I speak on work-life balance, I go into the whole concept around that it's to each its own. So what works for one person, what works for Sami, may not be the equation or the cookie cutter that works for Kendra. And so once we recognize that, we often relieve ourselves of a lot of expectations that, so-and-so spends this much time with their kids and does this and that with their kids. Do what feels right for you. Do what's in your heart. Give and serve, and the rest usually falls in place. I also noticed a huge change in my career once I actually again, had the courage and boldness to say my family comes first. And I wasn't ashamed or, didn't have a hard time communicating that even to executives. Once I did that, my career went in complete opposite direction than I thought it was going to go in. I thought I was just taking this position and I would sort of flatline and just accept the salary until I retired. I started noticing bumps in salary, stock grants, president club trips, all these things happening. And of course, it was because I was providing value in my day-to-day job. And unless you do that, then you can't really come out and say my family comes first, because then you're going to have some problems. You still have to do your work, right? But what's interesting about that is once I prioritized my family, everything else fell into place. And it's because I was really in touch with who I was being as a person, not just what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And so that's a big, big element into work-life balance.
Yeah. And, the thing that I find with, when I work with women who are, they're kind of balancing, the two different hats. One of the things that I've noticed is that, and I do not have kids. I'm a proud aunt, and I've been a dog parent, but what I've noticed that I am so impressed with moms is that, it's like one day you're just like a regular human, and then the next, and this is parents in general, but then the next day you somehow manage to learn how to focus and run an entire business in the 1 hour you have while somebody is taking a nap. And yeah. I am astounded by that, and just how, people can get stuff done. I also like how you focus on how it's not about being cookie cutter, because I have noticed with my friends who do have kids, and they tell me about what's going on in these like mommy Facebook groups that are supposed to be for support, and I'm like, they're really critical for being a support group. Wow, this is like a judgment circle. So for women who are kind of struggling with those boxes that were kind of, they feel like they're forced into, what would you say to them to kind of break out of that cookie cutter mode?
Well, again, it goes back to realizing there's only one you, and you are priceless, and you are as unique as your DNA, right? It's you on the outside and your personality, and what works for you, again, is as unique as your DNA. So once you realize that, you realize that, you know what, I am different, and I just need to do things differently, and have conviction with that, have courage with that, and sit in that for a bit. So I would recommend definitely working on that piece and the self-doubt piece, which actually is so amazing, because initially I thought I was just going into career coaching and in leadership coaching, and then next thing you know, I'm in life coaching, and it's because they're so intertwined that they're so entangled. It's impossible to do one without the other, and so that's where they come across. So self-doubt is pervasive across both, and once you learn to work with that, then you will notice leaps and bounds your life improving. The next piece would be around really just limiting yourself to 3 hours a day or 4 hours a day, and be laser focused on the tasks that you need to do that day in order to achieve what you want to achieve. And I usually only have one objective a day. And if I realize that it's going to take me more than a day to do it, have the compassion for yourself to let that happen. Again, and that's a big one is, again, like you said, these support groups sometimes ends up people being more critical and saying, well, this worked for me, that didn't. Oh, don't do that. It's like, you know what, just do what works for you. And I know that, I'm a member of Facebook groups, so I understand there's that element of support, but at the same time, we need to make sure that you are the driver of the car called your life. And so I recently wrote a blog about this. It said, are you the author of your life story? And so that's just something I like to always ask and I have to ask myself too, because sometimes there's other people that scribble on your piece of paper that's called your life story, and you get off track and you're like in a totally different chapter, but you have the ability to bring it back and start to take control of authoring your life story. So just make sure that you're always the one doing that. But those 3 to 4 hours a day of focus are really, really helpful. What you realize is you'll get so much done because you don't have the time to focus on any of the other little incidental things. So that's super helpful. And then the last piece I would say is, if it's in the budget, I would always hire a coach. One of my favorite coaches is Steve Chandler. I've been reading a lot of his books, and my coach actually is one of his proteges. And I love his quote when he says, you can only take someone as deep as you've gone yourself. And so what that means is that if you have a coach that's done a lot of their inner work, they can take you so much deeper than you can take yourself. And so the same is true that, if you have a budget, hire a coach. If not, there's always coaches out there doing sometimes scholarships or, doing some pro bono work, just because a lot of us want to serve and we believe in truly serving and helping people. It's not, by and large, we're obviously for-profit businesses, so we can't be doing it all the time. But at the same time, if you, reach out, there's always somebody, but if you can afford it, usually they can figure out a package or something to at least help you get started. But I would always say that a coach is always something great to have. Athletes have coaches because it makes their performance better. It makes them think about things differently. They change their grip. Next thing they notice, their game completely changes. That's how it is for us in life and work as well.
Mm-hmm. And I love that, because so many people have this idea, especially if you come from the United States like I do, where there's this mentality of being so uber individualist that we forget the fact that we are pack animals. We work better when we can really kind of work with each other, when we are knowledge sharing, when we are, active, because that's the thing, you can't be a leader unless you have actually delved in and like worked with someone who is a strong leader and gotten a lot of your, like, let's be real, gotten your own shit sorted. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect, but if you can actually are continually working with yourself, that makes your leadership stronger. So thank you for pointing that out.
Right. And one thing I always like to quote is there's a gentleman by the name of Corey Bauk who wrote a book called The Lens of Leadership. And he is a naval veteran. And he also is an executive for Johnsonville Sausages out of Wisconsin right now. And he and I were just speaking on the phone the other day. And he has this great quote where he says, followership is a predecessor to leadership. And so that's something that we can all know and understand is that, my son recently was at school and somebody said, he's more of a follower than a leader. And I kind of sat back and I thought, that's interesting, because when he's at home with his little brother, he's very much a leader. He steps up and he's the leader. So there's two things. Followership is a predecessor to leadership. The only way we can all learn to be a good leader is by watching those who do it well and emulating their behavior. It's completely normal. We all do it. We've all done it. Warren Buffett, Steve Jobs when he was alive, all these people have done it. That's how we're going to become good leaders too. So don't be ashamed in the fact that you are following someone, you're emulating them, and that you don't feel like you have it in you and that you have this imposter syndrome. Everybody does it. I do it too. So followership is a predecessor to leadership. The other piece is that that's really interesting is around the fact that we often think that it has to be perfect for us to do anything. Like I have to be perfect before I can become a leader. I have to be perfect before I can start my business as a mompreneur. And I will tell you, if you wait till you have perfection, it won't ever happen. So you need to just step into it and try. And, I don't like the term fail, although there's, a lot of people use the term fail. I use the term teachable moment, but I think there's a lot of teachable moments, or you could say failures, that are going to need to happen. And that's where the most learning comes. So.
Hallelujah. That is something that I've done my whole life, where it's just like, try it. Really ask, this is for anybody listening. If you have a dream, whatever it is, think about what is the worst that could happen if you fail. Most of the time, it's not that bad. It might be okay. You might look a little bit silly if you try stand up, or, maybe, you might have to walk for part of that marathon that you decide to run. If that's the worst thing, then just go for it.
Yep.
Kendra, thank you so much for being on the show. And I wanted to just give you a moment to let everybody know who's listening where they can find you and what you're doing next. So if people want to take the next step with just figuring out more about you, reading your blog, give them the deets.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been great to be here. So you can find me at KendraDahlstrom.com. I also offer live and on-demand webcast series. And the one that I think is the most interesting is called 3 Weeks to Massive Impact. And so in just a short amount of 3 weeks, we will review everything from getting your vision straight, getting it aligned with your strategy and execution, so you have an actual roadmap so that you can execute against it for the next 3 to 5 years. This is critical for anyone going into business, anyone who's got an existing business to revisit it, anyone in a large corporation. I've done it with everything from Fortune 100 companies down to mompreneurs. So this can also be an a la carte item as well, but people love that. The next one is around these 11 pillars of leadership, so that you can learn, where am I strong? Where do I need help? How can I tap into this? How can I start nurturing this inner leadership that I know exists? I need a little nudge. And so that's what that class is for. And then the third element is around work-life balance. So that's a piece that people often need a lot of help on. They want a better understanding of it. They, again, think it's cookie cutter. They don't realize that what's right for one isn't right for the other. And so this is something that we actually use some principles from Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek, and we incorporate all of the knowledge from all these different places. I I do offer, team and individual coaching. So I'm doing a lot of that right now, just in the process of getting my speaking business to where I want it to be, speaking at women's associations, women's leadership conferences. I also speak to men and women. I just happen to focus on women's leadership because I am a woman. I do believe that, there's some unique challenges that present themselves, to your point earlier, around bossiness and how to lead with grace and to, still be a leader, but not come across as what people would call bossy or pushy. So I do quite a bit of speaking to the women's space, but what's interesting is I've noticed I've been getting a lot of requests from men who are interested in what I have to offer. So I think there is a softer side that men are seeing is needed in the corporate America and then in workplace. And so they're very much opening themselves up to that. So I do have a book that's coming out in January called Leading from Your Power: Boldly Influence Others by Being Your Authentic Self. And so I would love to come back and talk with you more about that when that is ready and available. But until then, I have blogs. I blog regularly. People can reach out to me. They can find me on YouTube. And I just, I'm out there serving to help people because I wish someone had done this for me.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Kendra. I would love to have you back when the book is out. I love the sound of that. And thank you again so much for being here. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And I will put in the show notes everything about Kendra so you can get those details as well. So, as always, I'm Sami. Thank you for listening to the Career Kickstart Show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a true pleasure.
Find something cool at cool.careerkickstartacademy.com.